So today's topic, this class and probably next class, let's see how far we go, is link analysis. To understand link analysis, we need to first um, understand very vaguely at least. I mean, because you of course have not done an information retrieval course or don't know how search engines work or worked. But let me give you some basic idea that how search engines rank documents, right? So the main approach, which used to be the case for web search engines in the 1990s when the World Wide Web really flourished, okay? The main approach used to be matching terms. Okay? Terms, loosely speaking, are words. Okay, it's loosely speaking. Let's not worry about the exact meaning right now. So let's say matching words, which meant that if the query words are present in a document, then the document is possibly relevant. Okay, right? So that would just be a Boolean matching, right? So give me all documents matching the word statistics. Well, there will be too many of them, but I can show only 10, right? I can show 10 or 20 or something. I want to show the top 10 or top 20 documents kind of a thing, right? So, so then the next step was assign scores. Depending on how many times every word appears in a document and few other factors, which I'm going to explain a bit of it now, we assign a score for every term in a document. That means every term given a document, not every term has the same score in that document. So how should the score be computed? Intuition one, more times a term is present in a document, the more important it is. Well, for example, you have a long article and all the way you keep talking about, graph. That means the word graph is very important for this particular document. And maybe once only you talked about something else, so that word is present only once, so maybe that has a mention, but it's not really important. So that is the intuition behind this. So this gives rise to the factor called term frequency, or commonly known as TF. There are formulas for this. We are not going to get into that right now. It's a whole new topic altogether. The other intuition is, if a term is present in many documents, then it is not special in any of the documents. What does it mean? Too frequent. It's present everywhere. So why should that be important in this particular document? Right. So let's say the terms like this, eat, is, not, well, they don't really mean any topic or something, right? They don't really mean any concept. Or suppose you are only considering Google Scholar articles or like papers belonging to the computer science domain. Then obviously algorithm and such, some terms are too generic for that domain. So they are not going to get high scores in a document. So there are two factors then. One, it should be present more number of times relatively, and it should not be present in too many documents. I mean, it's like, another human analogy is, if you have too many connections, it's diluted, right? You are likely to have not so important connection with any particular person, something like that, right? Okay, anyway, so so this gives rise to the factor called document frequency. That means in how many documents is it present. And you actually use the inverse of document frequency, because the more the document frequency, the less the weight it should be. So these two together is formulated as TF IDF, and then there are other advanced formulations extending TF IDF and so on, which essentially does the following: that an engine is then able to rank documents based on some scores depending on term occurrences, depending on term occurrence patterns. So this was the story for early search engines. So which meant that higher TF-IDF score means documents would show up higher in the search engine ranking. Is this part intuitively clear?
Sir, one question. You didn't say what is meant by document frequency. Like, what is the document frequency here?
Yeah. So the document frequency is the number of documents in which a term occurs. So the document frequency of a term.
Okay.
So basically, what a simple formulation would be, for a term, the term frequency in a document, so number of times it occurs in a document, somehow log dampened that a bit. Okay, so some normalization of that times the inverse document frequency. So times, you know, some inverse form of the document frequency. Again,
Okay.
some dampening will be used, some log dampening will be used, and all. So there are basically, you know, the formula is more complicated, but this is essentially the intuition. All right. So so you will obviously, if you do the IR course, maybe next semester or some other time, you will learn these things in much more detail. But right now, we will move on to something else. So that is, well, the early search engines were doing a fair job, but the spammers wanted to exploit the ranking algorithm. So spammers' goal was to get their pages to show up in the search results, you know, up top among the top results, so that people click on them. Doesn't matter whether those pages are relevant at all or not, we will end up clicking if we see, right? I mean, we'll maybe not all the time, but if we see something again and again, we will actually end up clicking. So that's how people advertise. In a junk advertisement used to be that way. And so the end goal is advertising, maybe phishing, maybe malware spreading. So you click and then it tries to plant a virus or something like that. So whatever reason it is, it's not how the users would want them to do things, right? So how to get a page up in the search ranking? So how could they, you know, exploit the ranking algorithm? Okay. So let's say there is, suppose normal users issue this query, Aamir Khan movie. So what are the documents which are legitimate? So let's say there is a document talking about the movie PK, right? So well, that's a good result. So that's fine. Then another movie, some generic document talking about different movies of American and so on. Right? So there are obviously good documents for that. But then the spammer thought, okay, I'll create documents with the popular query terms. In this case, maybe these are the popular query terms being present many times. So what they did was they put Aamir Khan 5 times, okay, and you know, basically popular terms which people use a lot, they just put junk. They don't even have to be English sentences or something like that. So just put those terms many times, and essentially, if you go there, go to those pages, you will see some ad and things like that. You will end up clicking. So essentially, that's an advertisement. So this scenario was quite prevalent when we started using computer in our undergraduates in the late 90s, where, you know, you were just seeing the internet for the first time, and there are lots of such spam results. In Alta Vista was the search engine then, the Yahoo was the search engine then, and so on. All right, so then what would happen is, unfortunately, this document, which has nothing to do with what you actually want in the query, this will actually get a very high ranking, right? So that's the scenario which was called term spam. So you spam the web using terms. Okay, clear? So basically, what will happen? Your term frequency will increase a lot, right? So you will, I mean, yeah, increase a lot, and then you will get to do this. So this gave rise to the very famous algorithm called PageRank. The motivation of PageRank is the following. The motivation is users of the web. That means people who write the web pages, right? So authors of the web pages are largely reasonable people. So well, there are some spammers, but most people are reasonable people. So you cannot control what terms a spammer puts into his or her web pages, but mostly reasonable people will put links to useful pages, right? So, I mean, of course, we'll describe the algorithm. So PageRank was named after Larry Page. You can think of Page as also web page, but actually Larry Page, Sergey Brin. The paper was Brin, Page, Rajiv Motwani, and another person. So this was patented by Stanford University, later bought by Google. Okay, and the approach was the following. The approach was, the importance of a web page is influenced by the number and quality of links into the page. And this importance will be modeled into a score, which we'll call PageRank. Okay, so the importance of a web page will be influenced by the number and quality of links into the page, how people cite your page. Okay, so that's the kind of the idea. And then search results will be ranked by, of course, the standard term scoring, TF, IDF, and all those things. But not only that, as well as page rank, a combination of these two. So what you want, yes, you want terms matching your documents or documents matching your terms, but you also want them to have a reliable page rank score. The technical intuition behind the page rank algorithm is the random web surfer model. So random surfer follows links and serves the web. The random surfer is more likely to end up at more important pages. Okay. So before going into this, I want to show you, just a moment, I want to show you something interesting. Yeah, just a moment. Okay, so essentially, this is a snippet from the paper. It's a technical report in Stanford University. The paper which has been cited 14,000 times or more than that. The bringing order to the web. Okay, so this. So what they are writing here is a major application of PageRank is searching. We have implemented two search engines which use PageRank. The first one we will discuss is a simple title-based search engine. The second search engine is a full-text search engine called Google. Google utilizes a number of factors, blah, 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 and all that. Okay. And Google was then, okay, let me show you here. Yeah. So Google was then a search engine under Stanford, google.stanford.edu. All right. So this is 1999. Now let me come back to the slide sharing. Okay. So the advantage of this approach would be that term spam cannot ensure. So some spammer can do whatever they want in their pages, but they cannot ensure that the web page I am writing, suppose I'm citing this Google's paper, or I'm citing a page in Wikipedia, or I'm actually putting a link to some other good reliable page. Okay, they cannot force me to put links into their page. Right. So the number and quality of links into their page, that they cannot do. So yeah, there are many variations of PageRank. So let's actually discuss that. So this is the random surfer model. Suppose this is a small graph. Let's say this is the tiny web. Okay. So I mean, just a small example, right? You can understand this, right? So there are these 4 pages, nodes in the graph. And these are links, right? So which means the web page A puts the links to C, C also puts the links to A, and so on. So this is a web graph. Links are directed edges. Assume equal weights in this example. That means the directed edges have equal weights. If a surfer starts at A, so the random surfer means, okay, lockdown, I have nothing to do, I just serve the web, right? So I serve the web according to certain rule that I go to a page, okay? So where do I start? I start randomly. I start randomly in any of the pages. And then from that page, so if I start at A, I have 3 possibilities. I can go to C, D, or B. So with probability 1/3 each, I may go to B, C, or D in the next step. If a surfer starts at B, then I have only 2 possibilities, D and A. So I go to A or D with probability half each. Okay, so that is what I keep doing as a random surfer. So this can define a transition matrix. Okay, so this can define a transition matrix which looks like this. The matrix is only the 4x4 square matrix, but the ABCD I have written here to explain that from A, the first row is of course corresponds to A. With you can go to B, C, or D with probability 1/3. So one can write this in this way or the transpose way. You just have to be careful about your later computation. You have to be consistent. So this column corresponds to A. If you start at A, what are the probabilities of you going to the other vertices in the next step? Okay, so that is what this matrix is showing. So this, those of you have studied Markov chain in some course know that this is a Markov process. If you don't know, we will at a high level we'll discuss discuss this, and we'll also discuss the mathematical theorem which inspired all this, and then move on with PageRank. There is actually the Ferron-Frobenius theory, which is a detailed theory which gives rise to all of this. Maybe we'll not cover it, but I will give you pointers to read up in case you want to actually learn the linear algebra proofs. So Markov process, a process is called Markov process if the future state is solely based on the present. It's memoryless. That means what I will do next only depends on now. Where am I now? It does not depend on where I was yesterday or in the previous state. And the way I have defined it is Mij is the probability that you go from J to I in the next step given you are currently in J. All right, so is this part clear, the transition matrix?
Yes. Yes.
Okay, fine. So let's see what we can do with the transition matrix. So random surfer initially will be at any position with equal probability 1 by n. In this particular case, my n is 4 nodes, right? So we will have a distribution vector of the probability of the random surfer being in any of the nodes, right? So the distribution vector will be this. What it means is at the 0th step, that means the initial step, basically, the probability of the random surfer being at A is 1 by 4, B is also 1 by 4, and so on, right? So that's the starting position. So what will be the probability distribution for the random surfer after one step? Any guess? Those who have not done Markov process before.
AV, MB.
Yeah, MB, right? So you can actually multiply. So distribution vector after one step will be MB. So let's actually see. I mean, if you have done this before, you may have the intuition. If you have not done this before, or in any case, this intuition will not hurt you. Okay, even when I studied this long time back for the first time, working this out was interesting. So why is it MB? Let's look at this first entry of MB. How do we get this entry? It is this times 1 by 4. What is 0 times 1 by 4 in this case? This is the condition, or this is a scenario that you were initially at A, that is the probability 1 by 4, and you are going from A to A. That is not possible. This is the probability that you're going from A to A. Okay, there is no self loop at A, so you cannot go from A to A, so that is not possible. So 0 times 1 by 4 is 0. If you are initially at B, the probability of that is 1 by 4. You can go from B to A with probability half, right? This is half. So this times this. So then the overall probability is 1 by 8 and so on. So initially, if you were at C, you will definitely go to A. There is only one edge. Overall probability is 1 by 4. And initially, if you are at D, you will go to A with probability 0. So the first entry of MB tells you the probability of the surfer being at A after the first step. So the first step, after the first step, you can be at A with these 4 possibilities, and that's why you get the sum of these, which is 9 by 24. So similarly, so that's the intuition, right? So that's how a matrix multiplied by this vector gives you the transition. Also, this is why it is called the transition matrix. So what would be the distribution vector after the second step? It will be M square V. Very clearly MB and then another M on the left, right? So this you can keep doing. So what it means is that, okay, now so we'll actually see the Perron-Frobenius theorem. So Perron-Frobenius theorem, they were actually very, very old. I think in 1907, Perron proved the theorem for a particular class of matrices. And then Frobenius in 1912 proved it for a slightly more general case, which suffices to build the following. Okay, so let's understand the theorem in the context of what we want to do. So what what this theorem implies is the following, that the probability distribution, this probability distribution we are talking about, converges to a limiting distribution, which means that even if you multiply m again and again, it doesn't really change much. Okay, so when mv will become equal to v, if, well, it will not happen for any matrix or any transition matrix or any graph. Okay, it will happen if the graph is strongly connected. That means it is possible to go from any node to any other node. Doesn't have to be by one edge, but at least in a path. Okay, it's a directed graph, right? It's a directed graph, so you must have a path from every node to every other node. Then the graph is strongly connected. Then this probability distribution converges to a limiting distribution. There are many other results actually. So which essentially means that there is no dead end. So that means each node has some outgoing edge. There is no dead end, and there is no dead group kind of a thing. So which we'll see a little bit later. So we also, from the theorem, we also get that the limiting v is an eigenvector of m with eigenvalue 1. And this is actually the largest eigenvalue also. And in our case, the case we saw, m is left stochastic. That means each column has some 1, right? Each column is a probability distribution, right? From every node, what are the probabilities of going to other nodes? So the sum of that will be 1. And in this case, the largest eigenvalue of m will be 1. And v will be the principal eigenvector of m. Now, what does it mean? That you can actually get to v, this limiting distribution, by iteratively multiplying a random distribution by m again and again, right? What is an eigenvector? The eigenvector means you simply scale. If v is an eigenvector of m, right, then mv will be alpha times v, with the alpha being the eigenvalue, but here the eigenvalue is 1, so mv equal to v, right? So that's what will happen. So how will we do this computationally? Well, that's quite obvious. We'll initialize v to be our first initial distribution, randomly start anywhere, so 1 by n dot 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 1 by n, right? And then as long as the norm of mv minus v is greater than some error bound, okay, actually Ferron-Frobenius used the L1 norm. So as long as the norm is greater than e, greater than epsilon, you keep doing v reassigned to mv. So you keep actually doing this, and that's your algorithm. So what is this then? This is multiplying a vector with a matrix, the same matrix, repeatedly. We have done this in MapReduce, right? So multiplying a vector with a matrix. So essentially, to compute PageRank, all you need is multiply a vector with a matrix again and again. So yeah, so that's what PageRank is. Okay, but that's a simplified version of PageRank. We will see lots of problems arising from this in a while. Up to this, is this part okay? I mean, obviously we are not going into the proof of the theorem, but yeah, I mean, basically what it means is that this distribution will converge. And in fact, the theorem also says that the distribution will converge exponentially. That means the error bound will go down very fast. So in practice, what people do, they don't really have to check for the error bound. People just run this iterative multiplication 20 times or 30 times, and that's it. Okay, so they just run it a few times, and that means the PageRank is approximately whatever we want. Okay, so that's what people do in practice. Now, that was a nice theory built on a strong mathematical background, but the reality check. The reality check is the web is not strongly connected. Okay, so that's the problem. Then we have an issue. The web is not strongly connected. And an early study of the web showed, and I think this is also a similar picture I could find for recent studies also. I mean, with whatever quick survey I did, maybe yesterday or something. So this picture is actually from the book, but this picture is very common. Every book or everywhere this is the picture. Okay, some version of this picture. So so what you have in the web is something like this. There is a strongly connected component, which is a very big one. So one large strongly connected component, but there are several other components. Okay, so like there are pages which are only like this, and then there are So there are pages from where you can go out, and there are pages to which you can go in. And then from here to here, you can actually, you have another set of pages like a tube and so on. So which means that there are actually portions, and then there are some disconnected components altogether. So for example, if I prepare a website for my course, right? I prepared it on Google Sites. Now, nobody has linked to that page yet, right? I mean, all I can do is next time I access my ISI page, I can go there and make a link to that page. Then it will not be a disconnected one. But if I simply generate a first web page, then nobody has linked to it. Maybe I also haven't linked to anything yet. I've just written something out there, right? So that's a disconnected page. So this means we require some modification to the PageRank approach. It's not that simple anymore. So there are two main problems. So what are the two main problems? One are dead ends, a page with no outlink. That means once the surfer goes there, the surfer is stuck there, cannot go anywhere and cannot even go to that page because there is no link to that page also. And then the other kind is spider traps. So spider trap means the spider who is moving like a surfer will go into a group of pages and then cannot come out of that group. So group of pages which only link to themselves. Maybe from outside there is a link to those group of pages, but those group of pages don't link to anything else. So that's a spider trap. So let's actually look at what will happen if there are such things. So let's consider dead ends. So in our previous picture, I removed one edge and made C a dead end. So I had an edge from C to A, but I have removed it. So now C is a dead end, right? So if you go to C, you don't have any outgoing edge, not even to C itself. So then M is not stochastic anymore, rather substochastic. Okay, let's not try to get into that, but let's see what happens. So what happens is my column corresponding to C earlier had a 1 here, now everything is 0. So third column sum is 0 and not 1, or not even a positive number. So now if I keep multiplying, right, with this matrix, if I keep multiplying V, what will happen? The next step, MV, the values will go down a bit. Another step, M square V, the values will become even smaller. So any guess what will happen? No, just make a guess.
0, sir.
Yeah, all 0. So what will happen is all will go to 0. So the iteration will take all probabilities to 0. Intuitively, eventually, whatever way you go, you will come to C. And then you vanish. You don't even stay at C, right? Because by definition, you are bound to follow an outgoing link, and there is no outgoing link. So you essentially vanish. You don't even stay there. So this is the problem of dead ends. What is the problem of spider traps? So instead of making C a dead end, now let C be a one node spider trap. In general, of course, you will have a multi-node spider trap. This is a one node spider trap. So let's say we have a link from C to itself. That means once you go to C, you have to come back and come back to C only. You cannot go anywhere else. So now my matrix M has a 1 here in this 3-3 position, C to C. So now if you multiply, 2 steps will give you this. So now any guess what will happen?
0, 0, 1, 0.
Yeah, right. So then you will have a 1 for C and everything else will be 0. Intuitively, what will happen is the spider trap will get all the page rank. Or whatever way you go, you surf, you will go to C at some point eventually. Okay, and then you will stay at C forever. So the probability of eventually being at C is 1, and in all other places is 0.
Sir, the concept of spider trap is same as the concept of a honeypot.
What is that?
Sir, honeypot means whatever search you do, you will be redirected to that page only. Every time you search a certain term, you will be redirected to that page only.
Yes, I mean, I think maybe the exact technical detail can be different, how they do it, implement it, but yes, I mean, something like this. It's a trap. I mean, it's really a trap. I mean, whatever you do, you have to come back there. But it's not really whatever you do here. What you do is clear, right? What you do is well defined. You serve, but eventually you will go to C. That is the point. Okay, so to tackle this dead end and spider trap problem, which essentially makes the web not a strongly connected component, what we do is we'll actually do some modification and artificially make it a strongly connected component. So the approach is taxation or teleportation. The surfer may teleport to any other node with some probability. So the normal random surfing was whichever node I am right now in, there are a list of outlinks. I go to any of the links with equal probability. But now I am adding another possibility, that is I may suddenly teleport to any other node with some probability. Okay, so the idealized page rank, that means the previous formula that we saw had this iteration, right? So Vk equal to m times Vk minus 1, the previous iteration times, I mean, left multiplication by m. The page rank with taxation or teleportation is Vk is beta times this thing, beta times m Vk minus 1 plus 1 minus beta times this vector e by n, where e is 1 1 1 1 1, which essentially means this e is this vector 1 by n 1 by n 1 by n. So as if you are again starting afresh at any other node. So this means with probability beta you do what you are doing. With probability 1 minus beta, so you leave and join at another node. Typically beta is taken as 0.85 in most computations, and E is this. So essentially what happens is you change the iterative formula, but what is the intuition is you create artificial links to all other pages, right? So this creates artificial links to all other pages. That means you are adding probability that from any page to any page, you can go with probability 1 by n. Maybe from page A to page B, there was already some probability of going. Maybe the probability was already 1/3, but you are also adding, you are multiplying that 1/3 by 0.85 and you are adding 0.15 times 1 by n to that. So you are essentially changing the probabilities, but now the graph is obviously strongly connected. Not only strongly connected, it is, I mean, every node to every node has some edge. Maybe the weights are small, but every node to every node has an edge.
Sir, can you please explain one more time this E by n factor, like how you are making this second factor?
Yeah. So E is this just this 1 1 1 1 vector, and E by n means the vector 1 by n 1 by n 1 by n all the way.
Okay.
Okay. So is that clear? So it's just a vector. Maybe let me annotate. So the vector is just, okay, so this is this, right? So what you are doing, you had some stationary, not stationary, you had some distribution after the k minus 1th iteration, right, of the probabilities. You are multiplying that by m, but you are following that only with probability beta. And with 1 minus beta, you are following this probability, which was the first thing you did. In other words, if you consider jumping around, right? So let me actually go back to maybe the previous slide. Yeah, if you consider jumping around, so let's say I'm at B. Now I first draw a random number. If it is within 0.85, then I follow one of the two links with probability half each. If it is 0.15, then I jump to any other node with probability, 1 by n, maybe even here itself. So that is the idea. Is it clear?
So in this case 1 by n is 1/3?
No, in this case 1 by n is 1/4.
1/4.
Maybe here itself. Maybe it's like
Yeah,
starting
okay.
afresh. It's
Okay,
like starting afresh. But it will not really matter for a large n. 1 by n or 1 by n minus 1 will not actually make a difference. Right? So yeah. All right. So okay, we have done this already. Yeah. So essentially, what we are doing, we are actually creating artificial links to all other pages. Okay, so now if we look at the adjacency matrix, we will not have zeros anymore. Everything has at least a small probability. Okay, so I think let's try to finish this. So this meant that PageRank could be computed, and Google obviously became hugely popular with PageRank and essentially beat all other search engines in the process at that point of time, even now. So PageRank became, and also it was patented, so nobody else could use it. So PageRank kind of became the hero at that time. All right. So obviously Google took care of the term spam by PageRank, but the spammer was still around. So the spammers figured out just a simple term spam will not be enough, and these guys are intelligent. So what they did, some of them maybe, they created spam farms. How? So let's say this is your World Wide Web. Most of the web is inaccessible to the spammer. That means the spammer cannot influence the content of most of the web. They don't own those pages, or they cannot write anything in those pages. But there are some accessible pages like blogs or news sites or review sites, etc., where spammers can leave comments, right? So I don't know. I mean, these things have been again taken care of in later times, spam control and all those things. But I don't know whether you have seen anywhere some review site or some news article below that comments. Well, the comments are nothing. Comments have nothing to do with the actual topic. They are just links to some other pages. Okay. So at least in the 10 years ago or in the previous decade means 2000 to 2010 or so on. So I have seen that many times. So these are called accessible pages, which means that the spammers can go there and write comments, not modify the original content, but put something more. And then obviously spammers will have some pages controlled by themselves. Now, single pages will not be enough anymore. They actually have to invest a bit more. So these are the pages controlled by the spammer. This we call own pages. So now what will happen? Obviously, the accessible pages are not bad, right? I mean, there may be their blog posts, there may be their news article posts or something. So there are links from the other portion of the web to the accessible pages and vice versa. So that's there. And the spammers, suppose the spammer wants to increase the page rank of this particular page, a target page. So the spammer wants to increase the page rank of this page. Okay. And then what they do is they go to all those blogs and they put links to this page many times from different orange pages. And okay, that was just one page, but then it would kind of become a dead end. So what they do, they actually create a trap. They actually create a trap around. So links to and from supporting pages. Okay, so all those pages, they link to this page as well as there is a link from this page to this page. So they are called supporting pages. Why does it help them? Okay, so let's see some analysis of what how do they benefit from this. So let's say analysis of a spam farm. The picture is here for our reference. We now know the three portions of the picture, right? So let's say what they do. So the setup is the following. The total number of pages in the web is, let's say, n. This is a large number. So there is a target page T with m supporting pages. The red portion has m supporting pages. M is not that large. M is something which the spammer can control. So they can create more pages, but well, it cannot be as large as n. Let X be the page rank contributed by accessible pages. That means, what is page rank in the stationary distribution? If you think about the formula, after the distribution is stationary, whatever page rank one page has, it contributes a portion of that to its adjacent page. So if let's say my page has page rank I don't know, 0.2. Well, that's a very high page rank. It's a probability, right? So suppose it is 0.2 and I have only 2 outlinks. That means I'm contributing 0.2 divided by 2 to each of them. That is exactly how the transition matrix works, right? So the page rank contributed by the orange accessible pages will be the sum of all page rank of accessible pages times beta. Okay, so that is times beta, because our formula has this beta times the multiplication plus 1 minus beta times teleporting, right? So so now let's ask the question, how much can the page rank of the target page be? Okay, what can it be at most? So this page, how much can the page rank of this page be? Okay,
Sir, what is supporting pages?
these red portion, all these pages, okay, these are the supporting pages. So this is the target page, and the target page is surrounded by lots of supporting pages which has a link to the target page and from the target page. These are controlled by the spammer. Okay, so
supporting pages are created by the spammer.
Right. Okay, so then how much will the page rank of the target page be at most? So let's do that. So page rank of every supporting page, the red side, will be, there are m of them. Y is the page rank of the target page, so y by m times beta, and the 1 minus beta times n is our standard teleporting side, right? So that will be the page rank of every supporting page. So this is the contribution from the target page with page rank y, and this is the share of page rank among all pages in the web. So page rank of every supporting page is this. So page rank, then the target page has 3 sources of page rank. One is contribution from the accessible pages. That means the contribution from the orange side to this. So that contribution is X. Let's say that contribution is X. Then contribution from the supporting pages is, each supporting page has this page rank. So beta times that will be the contribution from the supporting pages. And obviously there is an nth share of the fraction 1 minus beta times the whole n. That's very negligible because small n is very large. So this is a very small number. So let's ignore that. So let's say we have this plus this. So then we have y equal to x plus this whole thing. From each supporting page we have this. So then from m supporting pages I have this much. If we solve for y, if you simply, this will become beta m, beta y by m. So m will cancel out. So you'll have beta square y, right? So beta square y, and then 1 minus beta by n. So you can actually take 1 and then beta square y to the left and so on. And that's how we will get 1 minus beta square below x here. And you can just work it out. So what will happen is we'll get y equal to this, this quantity. Now, let's say beta is 0.85, then this evaluates to y equal to 3.6x plus 0.46 m by n. What does this mean? What is x? X is the total page rank by spamming the blogs, spamming the comment section of the blogs and news and review pages and so on, right? So I mean, you must have heard about, work from home and earn 10,000 rupees per month and all those ads, right? So many of those people may actually, if they are actual jobs, the job is to just go and put those links. Okay, basically spam. Okay, now, so the more you can do, the more will this x be. Whatever that is C 3.6 times x plus 0.46 times m by n. That means 46% of the fraction of the page rank from the web. Okay, so this means you still, well, you cannot do as good as the term spam, but you can still get a decent page rank by a very organized farm. So no more single pages, but an organized way you can actually still do this. You can still hack this thing. So this was the job of the spammers, link spam. This is called the link spam. Okay. Yeah, sorry about the animation malfunction. We'll come to the formula. So again, obviously the war never ends. So the link spam page rank came, the link spam came, and then obviously people, the good people figured out how to take care of link spam. So how was that? Well, that is a set of trustworthy pages where the spammers cannot place links. The vulnerability was in the accessible pages, right? So, decide a set of trustworthy pages, and obviously partly manually and then automatically decide where the spammers cannot place links, maybe Wikipedia after moderation, university pages, and many other pages, and then compute something called a trust rank instead of page rank, little bit modification of the formula. So what is the modification? The random surfers can only start at one of the trusted pages. So instead of En by n, I now have, so suppose I have total 1 billion pages, but I only have 1 million trusted pages. So I start at one of the trusted pages. I start my journey at one of the trusted pages, and whenever I teleport, I come back to one of the trusted pages. Okay, so I don't, I don't teleport to anywhere randomly. So this mitigated the problem of term spam to some extent, and then the following quantity was defined: spam mass. So what will happen if the page rank is high but the trust rank is low? A good Wikipedia page or a good university page will not have this. It will have a decent page rank and decent trust rank, both will be similar. So page rank minus trust rank will be low for good pages, but for the spam pages, page rank will be high and trust rank will be low. So spam mass means, high spam mass means it is likely to be spam. So this was one approach of detecting link spam on the web. All right. So I think, yeah, it's 1:20. So we have finished this portion at this point. We'll think about whether we'll continue on link analysis any further. There are topics on hubs and authorities and things like that. If you actually do the IR course in the next semester, you will do those things in further detail. Because the semester is already curtailed a bit by lesser class hours and things being online, I think the link analysis part I will keep to this. We'll move to the next chapter afterwards. But the next class is on Saturday. What I want to do, I hope I'll be able to prepare. If I'm able to prepare, I will actually show you 2-3 hands-ons. So maybe one computation of page rank using Spark, maybe min hash something and so on. So I will actually give you some basic hands-on on those. If I can finish the preparation by that time. If I cannot finish, I'll start another chapter and do this on Tuesday. Okay, so the idea is I will actually take up some hands-on examples from the last few things we did, and we will do that on Saturday. All right, any immediate questions as of now?
Sir, you please explain this spam mass is equal to page rank minus trust rank, these two last lines.
Yes, yes. So let's see. So did you get the idea behind trust rank, right? So idea behind trust rank is you again and again you come back to the trusted pages.
Fine,
You don't teleport to any of the spam pages or the accessible pages, the vulnerable pages.
Okay.
Now, what we saw in the previous slide was the spammer could actually increase the page rank of the spam pages by all those hacks, lot of supporting pages and all. So it is possible that a page rank of a page is high, but that is actually not a good page. That is actually spam. But the trust rank, that will not happen so much, right? So trust rank, it will not happen because you're again and again coming back to this. So the probability of you being in the trusted pages are much higher. And in the trusted pages and pages close to the trusted pages are much higher. So the trusted pages, if you look at the previous picture, the trusted pages are much farther than these pages, right? So, so that is the whole idea. Now, okay, I'm sorry, let me go back here. So then that means the good pages will have both page rank and trust rank high or similar numbers. So the spam mass will be low.
Okay.
But the spam pages may get a high page rank, but the trust rank will not be high. So the spam mass will be, some higher number by lower number will be higher. So which means that the high spam mass means it's an indication of a page to be spammed by links.
Okay, sir. And sir, on Saturday, you will not start with a new topic. But Are you
I'll
going to-
try. I'll try that we'll not start with a new topic. Instead, I'll do some hands-on.
Can you please solve some examples on that previous two chapters that you have taught, like the locality sensitive hashing and the last chapter that you
Okay,
taught?
so what I will do then on Saturday, since it's the class hours, I will actually do the hands-on. I'll try to do that. Let's do another separate session, maybe someday evening or something, where we'll do a problem solving thing. Okay, so we'll have to. It's an optional one, so it will be similar to a doubt clearing session, but we can have more of it whenever necessary, right? So
Then, sir,
I'll-
you on Monday you have the quiz. Then on Wednesday you could take a problem solving session.
Wednesday, yeah, something like that we can do, definitely. Yes. Okay, so we can do something like that. Very soon. I mean, we'll do it very soon. So also one of the things, if I suggest all of you to actually go through the book by Leskovec, Rajaraman and Ullman and try to, so there are lots of exercises on the fly. Okay, so try to solve them just to get your intuitions clear. If you see that you are able to solve them, it's fine. If you have doubts, just send them to me. If you cannot solve, send them to me in advance. So then I can also try and maybe I will be able to solve, or we'll see. I mean, so there maybe there are some hard ones. So basically that will actually be good. I mean, I can also look at some sample problems myself and try to solve, but then if you already come forward with some problems that you had difficulty with, it will be even more fruitful. Okay, so the problem solving session will be similar to a doubt clearing session, optional. The schedule for that we'll figure out later.
Okay, sir.
All right then. So thank you so much. On Saturday, hopefully I will take a hands-on session. So I'll actually let you know on Saturday morning whether I have been able to prepare the hands-on or I will actually start a new chapter. Okay, but at least on Saturday or Monday there'll definitely be a hands-on on the past 3 chapters. All right.
And sir, you please send the slide of today's class.
Absolutely, I will do that and update the video. Yeah, in a few hours, definitely. All right.